Thing.
Hey everyone! Oh yeah, that's right. We're totally recording. Recording. Hey everyone! Welcome to episode 7 of Dudeguy. This is our podcast, an extension of what happens inside Endurance Station, where we talk to you about all things endurance from a pretty unique and sort of fun perspective. Our goal here is to make you smarter, have a couple laughs along the way, maybe keep you company on a long run or on a car ride. We talk about current events, stuff we found on the internet, things that come from our community. We share them with you here, hopefully to inspire you, perhaps educate you, or at the very least, make you chuckle out loud. If we've done that, then we've achieved our mission, and we're pretty good like that. So, Matt, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing great. I'm just excited to be on Dude Guy.
I just realized, are those new mountains in your background? Did you change the mountains?
No, same mountains.
Stop.
Same mountains.
Mountains. That means I never looked at the mountains in the first place.
The Twin Lakes. You'll see these mountains when you do Leadville. You will see these mountains. They will not.
Yeah,
hopefully, they will not have snow on them.
But, I was going to say this part I'm not preparing for. Although I have certainly a subcutaneous layer of fat that will keep me warm. For those of you who are tuning in, I am doing Leadville later this year. Matt is my trusty guide, who's pointing me in the right direction and giving me lots of advice, which means it's only up to me to mess it up. I'm pretty good at that. So hopefully I will survive. I do suck at quitting. So, well, I can't ride anymore. My body practically gave out on me in my trip to Spain. But I'm back. So thanks for paying attention, everybody, given the fact we had a Dude Guy hiatus. So we got some topics for this week. Before we get to the topics, just a quick little sponsor plug for someone else who just joined Endurance Station for sponsoring, which is Omius. I don't know if do you remember those guys? They had that cooling headband that kind of looked like something a punk rock band would wear.
I do remember that.
You do remember them, yeah, totally, yeah. So they're back. I actually know Jay, who's their sales rep this time around. He reached back out and said, "Hey, we've been a partner before. I want to be a partner again." So Endurance Station gets a really awesome discount, but only if you're inside the team, only behind our password protected wall. Otherwise, we lose all privileges. But they've actually expanded now to have different sets of gear. So you can use a hat, you can use a headband. So they've got wrist ones as well. And what they did differently this time is they've taken those cooling crystals. Which I just love saying, and you can put them on any one of the pieces of apparel that you have. So as long as you bought say a hat and a headband and a wristband, you can take them off the hat, put them on the headband, take them off the headband, put them on the wristband. So that's cool. You make the investment in the cooling crystals, right? And then you can put it where you want. For those of you who do hot races, being cool is super important. And typically we do it in a really rudimentary way, which is like dumping a ton of water on ourselves or like sticking ice in our pants. Like a frat party, but for cooling during a race. The crystals are really interesting. It's the same technology that comes out of dishwashers. The element that they use to heat and cool things down to extreme temperatures, they've taken that same element and put it externally on your headband or wristband or whatever, and it actually really chills things down really fast. So it's activated by water, but you don't have to keep pouring water on it. You only have to really do it once, and it lasts for quite a bit of time. So certainly worth checking out. That's omius.com, or just Google OMIUS and Endurance Station, and you'll see information, testimonials. But not the discount, because you got to be on the team. All right, sponsor plug done. We're good. We did it. Check. Sweet. Done. All right, and we didn't offend anybody. Hopefully not. Okay, so Dude Guy episode. I'm going to make you, Mystery Mountain Man, go first. You prepared to do that? I've got a few topics myself.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Did you peek at my topics, by the way? Did you look at my topics?
I did not.
Okay,
I wasn't fast enough to click on the link, so I'm going to be ambushed by exactly whatever you asked me. I'm now going to be ambushed.
Nice.
I didn't get to do any pre-Dude Guy research, so I'm going to wing it.
All right, no worries. Okay, let's hear it. What do you got for us?
Oh, I was going to do a recap of some of the racing that the team's done since we kicked off the racing season, stuff like that.
All right.
So, we've had a bunch of folks hit a bunch, certainly some triathlons, and then also some gravel races and some ultras, and across the board, I think we've got some pretty impressive performances and stuff like that. So, just running through the triathlon space, we had a couple athletes go to St. George. We had both a male and female athlete both qualify for the World Championships in Finland. Latte.
I just call it latte and offend everyone.
Yeah. But yeah, we had two athletes qualify for the World Championships in Finland in August.
Yes.
We had a 22-minute PR by another athlete that was recovering from a fractured hip from last year. That was in Gulf Coast. I mean, 22-minute PR. He was already at like what, 5:15 and went 4 and change. I mean, like
cracked 5 hours.
Yeah, he was moving. And then another age group, another athlete was like 10th in an international field. I mean, it was like, you name it. It was like Denmark and Italy and Croatia. I mean, all those guys showed up to the Texas race, Texas Ironman, right? And you did a podcast with him already, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And then what? Also in the ultra space, we had a guy do Cocodono, the Cocodono 250. He raced for a day, 14 hours and 28 minutes. He did just nonstop running, hiking, walking, and was crewed by guys on the team too. So that was a revenge race for him because he had a rough time the first go around. But
wait, did you say it's more than one day? Isn't it like a 3-day thing or something?
It said multiple days. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I clicked on the wrong link. You're right. It is multiple days. It's like 3 days. It's like
days. 250 miles. He was out there for forever.
Yeah, he was out there for forever. And then we had a couple other guys do the 100-miler and a 50K, the canyon. And then on the gravel side, we had a couple guys. We had a Six Sigma hopper. We had the female athlete come in first place in her age group, and then another guy do 150 miler, getting ready for Unbound, the gravel race. And then you had your two big events. You had Mallorca, where you cycled around Mallorca for what, 8 hours or whatever. What was that? And then
it was
10
hours and 19 minutes of ride time.
Yeah, and then another one in Tenerife, right? An island off of west coast of Africa or whatever. That's another big race. Tons of climbing at that one, right? How long was that one too? A week later?
That was brutal. That was 109 miles a week later, and it had just as much elevation as the 193 miler I did the week before. So the longest climb was 24.6 miles.
24.6.
Between 4 and 8% on average.
24 miles of climbing. That was like hours of climbing. That's hours of climbing right there. At least an hour plus. Yeah.
It was a lot up.
And and then lastly, I did the Pisgah stage races, a mountain bike races, 5 days of mountain bike, North Carolina. And then coming up, we have a bunch of athletes going to Lake Placid. I know we got at least
Lake Placid.
I'd say, a bunch of folks. I'd say about 8 or so.
Right.
Maybe more.
We've got people doing
Lake Placid soon.
We got 2 doing Chattanooga 70.3 this weekend.
Yeah.
They were in office hours on Monday night. Well, actually, one was in office hours on Monday night, Tony, and then Juan Vergara, alumni member, is there now. He texted me on WhatsApp. And then Morro Bay. We also have an athlete doing Morro Bay in California this weekend as well. First 70.3 with endurance station.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and we have some other guys. And we had 2 guys do Boston, at least. Both PR.
Forgot about that marathon.
Yeah, in the rain. Yeah, in the rain. So they both had a good time. So that was good. So yeah, I think we have. I mean, it's only been April and May, and that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good chunk of racing so far. Plus, everybody's got stuff coming up, and like you said, these guys coming up in Morro Bay and stuff like that too. So we've had some pretty good results so far, I think.
I love it. No, it's so true. I forget about it sometimes. I'm so used to it, right? Endurance Nation is 17 years old now, so we've been having race weekends where my phone blows up every weekend, but like, I'm here, I'm there, or like, he's over here, or she's going that way. And I'm on a podium, or I came close, or I just finished and I'm happy. And I think I've been kind of numbed to the awesomeness that is. And actually, one of the things about diversifying the team now, because of your point, we've got ultra runners and gravel riders and mountain bikers and triathletes and just normal runners and people who do swim run events, that there's someone doing something almost every weekend. And my favorite part is seeing that cross-pollination inside the group, are people who are like, I'm going to do an Ironman, like the podcast I did with Rob. He's like, but I'm going to go do an ultra later in the year. But in between there, I'm going to do this really big gravel race. Like, to me, obviously, there's a lot of privilege in that in terms of like having money and time. But being able to celebrate. We've always talked about saying, do cool stuff with your fitness. But when we said that, we were all triathletes. And so we'd like invested all this money in like a TT bike that only went that way really fast, and like all the TT stuff that you could only wear on that bike. Otherwise, you look like a Martian. And only stuff that you could eat when you were on that TT bike. And so that by doing all of that specialization, we kind of had eliminated, we would like ride by a mountain and be like, oh, look at a mountain. I can tell because it goes that way. I'm like, oh, maybe one day, like in my car, like it just wasn't in our world. And now to see people expand, it's like, oh, I think I see a tiny person running up that mountain. Oh, and there's like another tiny person like riding down the side of a dirt trail. Um, Someone swimming in the lake on the top and then running around the peak. Like all of that connected to me sort of added another depth to the endurance community. So just super big shout out to the team. It's just great to see the work. And if you are an athlete who's like, I love the thing that I do, but I also am kind of curious about the other things that people do, Endurance Station is the place to be, because our people, they do all the things, like all the things. It's crazy. So it's actually kind of intimidating because they come up with events and then you're sort of tempted, right? Where if you didn't know about it, maybe you would have been safe. So that's a good shout out. I love that shout out. Thank you for bringing that up. So for me, I was going to talk about sort of a little bit about my trip, but I'm calling it adventure investment. And so when we first started doing events with the team, it was training camps. I come to Lake Placid, ride Lake Placid, get ready for your Lake Placid event. And those were good. People showed up and wanted to do them, but there wasn't a lot of adventure in it. In fact, if you just go like one road over, there was a beautiful road in Lake Placid that you could ride on for miles with no bumps, and it was amazing. But nobody wanted to ride on that road because that wasn't the road they were going to ride on race day. So they like would put themselves into the hurt locker on this really poorly maintained road with tons and tons of traffic, and suffer for days, and then be like, "Oh my God, I nearly died!" And you almost died. I almost died, and like I got lost, and the locals, threw stuff at me and whatever. Meanwhile, just one road away, it was amazing, like untouched. It's so pristine. And now having the chance to travel through our training camps to Mallorca, to Tenerife, that there's just something awesome if you're able to be able to go somewhere new, unique, or cool to train to be ready for your race. So not to replicate your race, not to be like, oh, my race is going to be 37 degrees at the start, 72 degrees at the end, wind from the northwest, 87,000 feet of elevation. And at the midpoint, everybody will be speaking a certain dialect. So I'm now going to go travel to the part of the world that has all of those things and just pretend like I'm at the place. Instead, go to a place to train that's got its own personality, its own climate, its own culture, its own terrain. Have a chance to do your training, but also just expand your world. It's been a fun blast doing that with our training camps. And I really want to challenge people to, if you're able to, find that overlap between, hey, I've got to do an amount of training to get ready for my year, but can I do it in a place that opens doors and opportunities, right? Can I go somewhere that my family wants to go? Can I go somewhere new? How can I explore? There's something amazing about the intersection of those two places. I'll give you two examples. One is riding in new places or training in new places. Like just being new places is awesome. Like there's a part about just discovering stuff, like not knowing what's around the corner, and being surprised that you just don't get anymore if you constantly train at home or train in the same places. And that's part of what makes being an athlete awesome is like human powered discovery. So there's an element that just makes new places and sort of checking those off your bucket list awesome. The second side of it is when you are traveling, like if you've been able to travel, especially now post-pandemic, there's something about seeing a place that you got to under your own power, right? So you can like see a view, I mean, you can get out of a tour bus and like take a picture and wait for the other tourists to move or crop them out or something like that. Or you could like ride your bike somewhere where only people who can ride bikes get to, or climb a hill that only people who can climb that hill get to. And there's something about being in that place under your own human locomotion. It's like the vibe there is great. The food that you eat, I'm not sure. I've come to the realization that all the food around the world is not incredible. It's just all incredible because I've been exercising as I'm experiencing the culture and the travel. I feel like there's just a whole nother level of sensory engagement when you're out traveling and you're doing stuff that you love to do in another place. So I went to Italy with the family last year. I loved Italy, but I was just doing the family thing. Now I love my family, don't get me wrong, but when you go to Italy, but you're on a bike and you're exploring it and seeing the places that people only see on a bike from a bike perspective, and then you're trying the food or you find a cafe or whatever those pieces are, to me, that's the intersection of like adventure and exercise, which is the total win-win. So my advice to people who are listening at home is if you have the opportunity, it doesn't have to be abroad, it could be just in your own neck of the woods, but finding new places to go, and trying different things than you always do as you think through your training just brings to life an otherwise, perhaps year-long pilgrimage to your race where you've got lots of metrics to hit and we've got to hit so much TSS. And if I don't do 4x20 at FTP, I'm a failure, and sort of all of these rigid elements that we bring to our training. You can still get fit and have a ton of fun and still have a great race and just do it a little bit differently. So maybe if you can kind of break out the mold and see if you can go find a place. There's people who love to explore just like you are. You can find them online or talk to people who've done it. Obviously, if someone's traveled to Italy, say, they're happy to talk about it because they had a great time. And they probably got 1,000,000 slide pictures, or you can show you a little slideshow with some music set to it. Hopefully Italian music and not German tourist music in Italy, like Matt was telling me earlier. But it's just worth checking it out. All right, feedback, reactions. What do you say?
I think it scales, right? So even if,
Right.
like, I was just talking to some athletes this week that like had early season races and stuff like that, or job changes or whatever, and they were kind of like, I don't know, a little bit in a funk. And I think,
Yeah.
I guess my advice would be for some of those things would be to, if you can't explore someplace that would be, you can do epic anywhere, right? So like you just need to maybe just get out of your neighborhood, right? Or you just need to run the same loop that you always run, but you run it the opposite way. Oh my God. Like if you like,
Right.
I would,
So true.
like I was in a funk, like in a little bit, like in the fall, like I was just like, man, I'm going on the same rides all the time. And I decided I'd take my standard, whatever, my go-to 4-mile, 5-mile loop. I'm just going to run it the opposite direction. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go the opposite. I was like a whole new run. Like it was like a brand new run for me. Cause like I ran it the opposite way.
Right.
And I think sometimes you're just looking for a change. Right. So I think, and that helps, I think,
Right.
Just give you, like you said, it could make it epic if you, but it also could help you look for that change that, if you've been doing the same routes, or you do the same routes all the time, reverse the route, or, just go look for a different location. Like on the East Coast, the easiest one for an awesome location is Blue Ridge Parkway. Right. You could go hit the Blue Ridge Parkway, and that's relatively accessible because it's so long for a lot of people, a lot of good riding there too, so I think once you start doing stuff like that, then you kind of get hooked and you get like your epic level becomes, you want to go to lots of other places. And, I want to go do it in Arizona or some places you haven't been, but yeah. Right. Feedback, throw it back to you. Tennis.
Yeah. Tennis. I got it. So I'll do you one better. One of the reasons why I did this trip and I did all the crazy exercising I did on the trip was because I had high ambitious goals. And I also knew that, like, could I train for Leadville and then steamboat a week later in my garage, which those of you who follow me on Zwift know, apparently I love my garage and just riding around pretending to be a robot all the time. The answer is yes, I could technically do that. But the mental cost of doing all that work in my garage is massive. And so what I was able to do is say, I'll use my wallet to go to a new place. So I'm there's a financial cost, but I'm really reducing the mental cost. Like I rode 5 hours a day, or I averaged, 100 miles a day in Mallorca for 7 days. 0 of that was hard to do. It was like, coming back was hard. I was like, this is it. Like we have to go back to the hotel now. Like there's gotta be another cafe or a different hill or a thing, a monastery we haven't seen. And so I was able to offset that piece. So as part of when you think about as your goals go up, as you become more and more ambitious with your career or the opportunities, that can also be another opportunity for you to say, how do I approach this in a different way? And so I incentivized myself to do all of this training by putting these events on my calendar and then giving myself an opportunity to do it. So there's a big win inside that space as well. It fits the Endurance Nation model of like high ROI activities in a condensed window, not, disappearing every weekend for 7 hours on a bike ride. And so there's some value inside that. Everyone's got to find their own balance on the slider, but I definitely encourage those of you listening to like challenge yourselves to be like, how can I do what I do? I think Tim Ferriss, who I'm a huge fan of listening to on the podcast, one of the things he's got like 10 questions he asks. He's got a blog post about it, but one of them is, what would this look like if it was easy? So whatever you're trying to solve, you're trying to solve how to get from point A to point B. If you're trying to solve how do I explain something to my teammate, or working with my kids, or implementing a new thing at home, like a new rule. I think in this case, the rule would be, what would it look like if it was fun? So if I was training for Leadville and I had to get ready to ride a 10-hour race, how could training for that be fun? Right? Not just work. Like there's work to be done, and kilojoules are kilojoules. They're not like happy kilojoules or unhappy kilojoules. They're just kilojoules, right? So you get to choose, how happy are those kilojoules? Are they like awesome, epic on the side of this crazy climb kilojoule? Or is it like in your basement in the aero bars staring at a laptop with tiny people, repeating the bot messages on Zwift, which I love Zwift, but there's a different value inherent in each of those places. And I think it's incumbent on you to sort of figure out, how do you make it more fun? The more fun it is, the more likely to do it. And we always say, the longer you play the game, the more likely you are to win the game, right? And if a game itself is fun, then kind of sort of cheating, don't tell anybody. You've already won if it's fun while you're doing it. Who cares? Because it's fun and you're having a great time, right? Awesome. Okay, we're 21 minutes. We told ourselves we'd keep it under half an hour. So I'm going back to you. Do you have another one for us?
No, I don't have another one for you. That was it. I got some other. Yeah, that was it. Sorry.
God, Dudeguy shows up with just sprint game this time. No, no endurance game. All right, fine. You were bluffing there. You were hoping I wasn't going to catch you. All right. So the next one I had, which is kind of, I don't want to get too far down into the weeds, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Colin Chartier, and that little doping fiasco.
Man, yeah. I was watching. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go.
Well, yeah. So I was watching some folks have their opinions on that. Like, there's certainly Lionel Sanders came out with his.
Oh yeah.
How he was offended. I could see why, because like he spent time with him. Like he was in his house. Yes. Like Lionel was like, that guy was in my house. He trained with me during that particular time. Was he doping during my house? And he also crushed Lionel during that time. He's like, he physically crushed me. Like, was I trying to keep up with a guy that was doping? Right. Then there was some other folks that had the reaction of like, they saw that other triathletes were either saying, oh, I got an injury, I'll have to pull out of blah, 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 blah. And they immediately put their conspiracy hat on and was like, oh, did that guy pull out because they also are like doing something and now are afraid of getting caught? And like, it was like, wow, I didn't really think it was going to put that dark of a pall on the sport, per se. Like I didn't like, but some folks are really thinking that way. And it really didn't occur to me before I had heard those guys talk about it that way, of like, oh, I would have just thought that guy's injured. Okay. He's pulling out. Okay. Yeah. He's postponing for whatever reason. He doesn't want to race. I got it. Like that's typical. Right. But they saw those in a whole different light after that. I guess it was just more jarring to the whole community. Yeah, I don't know. What was your take?
No, totally jarring for sure. We haven't had an official doping violation in triathlon in forever, right? There's people who've been caught doping, say, cycling, who are triathletes now, and they sort of carry that burden with them. But it's been a long time since a professional triathlete has had a doping violation, which sort of begs the question: is it simply because there isn't a lot of incentives in professional triathlon? So there's not a lot of money. So if there was a lot of money, then more people would be here and more people would be likely to cheat. But since there's not a lot of money, we don't cheat. I don't necessarily agree with that argument, because if there's any money and there's not enough money to go around for all the people, someone's going to find a shortcut, whatever that shortcut may be. So my guess is that the way that the testing system is set up, I don't want to say rigorous, because I know it's expensive and arduous to implement, but I feel like it may not be equitably distributed across all events or across all athletes as competitors. It would be, I think, reassuring to some of the professionals whose livelihood depends on this to understand that there's a certain level of compliance that has to be followed that gives some reassurance that, hey, we're also all sort of all entering a level playing field. To Lionel's point, it does on some level get personal. Like we all argue, like if I see a person on YouTube cross the street and someone doesn't stop and like hits them, you and I could both have an opinion about that. We weren't there. We don't know that person. We don't know the driver. We're just watching a video and talking about it. That's 99% of internet reactions, right? But then you have situations like this where like Lionel was doing the typical triathlete thing, which is, hey, you like to do what I do? Come hang out with me. Let's train together. Let's do this. Let's be best buds. Let's push each other. And to kind of find out that the person that you were competing against for prize money, which you had gone beyond, the normal to be inviting and bring someone in, has been cheating, is like, that's like that's a emotional double cross. Like that's a tough place to
He
be.
was really
I
emotional
could
about
see
it.
that.
He really broke up. Yeah, he was really broken up about it. He was,
Oh
it was
yeah,
really,
dude. Lionel doesn't do
it
anything
became
now,
very
right?
personal. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it
can't.
became very personal because it was a trust thing with him. Really, it was a trust that was like,
Well, and that's the part I really appreciated about that part of the dialogue, which again, 99% of internet dialogue is like both of us talking hypothetically about something that has no impact upon us, but whatever, right? But in this case, it really brought home that when somebody does that, like when somebody cheats, like whether it's cheating in a classroom or cheating in a race or cheating somewhere, there is a local impact. You might say, like I'm speeding, right? Like, so you speed down the road. You're like, I'm speeding, but like, there's really nobody here. Like, what's the problem with speeding or whatever? But there is a local impact on some level when somebody else says like, oh, we can speed because I saw that person speeding, and then someone goes and speed and something happens. When somebody cheats, and speeding is maybe not the best example, there is a local impact. So if it's in a classroom and you get a better test than you should have gotten, you've put someone else lower on the curve who should have been above you on the curve. Like there's like a little, like a tiny, maybe not recognizable impact, but someone was affected by that decision, right? If you're not paying your taxes on some level, someone's affected by not having that revenue. And it feels impersonal, right? Like triathlon's an individual sport. I'm making myself better. So I'm cheating. I'm really cheating myself. I'm not cheating anyone else. But really, there's a bunch of other people who may have goals or aspirations that are predicated, rightly or wrongly, on their performance. And you're kind of cheating them from sort of understanding how they're doing if you're inherently cheating. I think I get into a lot of trouble myself as in a leadership role, whether it's in public service or here, because I have like crazy high ethics that I sort of like assume that the rest of the world is also just not going to cheat because cheating is bad. Um, and I think everyone sort of has to find that path forward. But to Lionel's point, like I feel that local stuff. So people see it like, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm like, someone was harmed by that. And ultimately, as you mentioned, the integrity of our sport on some level takes a hit, which is tough to see, especially because our sport and overall triathletes across the board are just incredible, awesome people like Lionel, who open their doors, share their information, share resources, etc. There's always going to be some portion of the population that's just, doing it at a different level. And I think it's incumbent upon us to like shine the light on the good people and raise those up. And just like my lawn, which thank you for those kind lawn compliments, if you grow the good stuff well enough and long enough, etc., it just kind of forces all the other stuff to kind of die out because it can't grow where there's just tons of positivity. And we have a well-structured sport with a good testing program, and everybody knows that they're competing through the merits of the sport, which is really just giving their best effort and what they can do on the day, so sorry for that sugar-fueled rant. But it was hard to see, like I feel bad. Like I think, I remember when Lance Armstrong, like sort of admitted that he used doping. My wife loves Lance Armstrong. Like for a while there were more Lance Armstrong pictures in her office than pictures of me, which I used to give her a tough time about all the time. I'm like, do you really need 4 pictures of Lance? Like, can't we just have like 1 picture of Lance? Like, does he have to be in every picture? Like, what's the story here? So when he came out and whether he was like Cheryl, maybe he was cheated on Cheryl Crow, I think, or whatever. Like I got in trouble whenever Lance did something. Like Lance cheated on Cheryl Crow. Like you could never. Like I don't even know Lance. I've never even met the guy. Like how can I be in trouble? But anyway, so I think that to me that's like that exemplifies sort of the power that role models have for all of us, whether it's the peers that we train with, the kids who are coming up in the sport, other people who maybe observe our sport from afar. It's these are important things. They seem like innocuous decisions, but I don't think people appreciate necessarily when they try and pick a shortcut. Just how important they are. Like, oh, I'm just a guy. I just want to go faster. I'm just one person. Like, what's the harm? I'm just one guy. I think it's just all it takes is one guy, right? Because then the next guy says, well, that guy's doing it, and the next person says, the course cutter says, well, someone else cut courses. So it's kind of, we can all, the people who want to do that stuff can justify why they want to do it. So let's just not give them a reason. Let's all just be super clean and transparent and healthy and smart. And maybe make this sport better, whatever your sport may be. We're talking about triathlon, but whatever sport is just by living by those principles and celebrating them, right? So anyway, I did it again. I blame our non-sponsor, Honey Roasted Peanuts from Planters, which is also more sugar. But anyway, so it's super. I don't want to end on a downer note, but I think to me, I take up. So it's like, what's the action item for you, the listener, to be like some dude got caught doping, or he admitted it. Like, so what? Like Lionel Sanders is crying. It looks a lot like his sweat. He could just be sweating. So maybe it's just in the Lionel Sanders workout video if I don't unmute it or read the captions. I think the takeaway for me is like, oh, I have values. Like, so we have a response, right? You're like, oh, that guy got caught cheating. Cheating is bad. So we have this sort of like visceral response to something. And then it's like, it's a great time to gut check and say like, hey, are my actions, what I do, like as an athlete and sort of the other aspects where the athlete Venn diagram overlaps with the other parts of my life, are my actions consistent with those values that I espouse, right? Because you're like, oh my God, somebody was drunk driving and they hit a neighbor's dog and the dog is dead. It's like, oh, like that feels terrible. I'm like, that's terrible. And then I'm like, ooh, have I ever gotten in a car when I had too much to drink? Thought I'd be okay, and don't I drive home? Like, to me, that's one of those like, how do I take that global lesson and bring it down personally and use it as an opportunity to confirm that like my actions actually map to the values that I'm not just expressing publicly, but those that I have when I hear about that stuff. I think that's like the best path forward, right? That's the part that makes you, accountable to yourself and hopefully shows you a path forward. To be better. So anyway, say something, Dudeguy.
All right.
Come back.
So
have I talked to you into a coma?
No, like I think the thing that was coming to mind for me after you were talking about like your own personal actions and stuff like that was that I read something else this week that was saying that Kobe Bryant had this great quote that basically said, we need to spend more time like in our own heads and less time with our smartphones. And the way I'm going to link that into what you said is that like, he says that voice in your head is how you negotiate with yourself, and like how you negotiate with yourself, and that the voice that's positive and the voice that's negative drives your decisions. And so spending some time, the example was like when you're standing in line, like, can you get faster by standing in line at the grocery store? And you can, instead of like taking your phone out and scrolling through your phone because you're trying to not listen to the voice in your head, but spending some time with that voice in your head of like, what is good, what is bad, how do you perceive yourself, that kind of stuff like that. I think that ties into kind of what you're talking about with the, why that guy decided that he needed to, use performance enhancing drugs. So like the voice in his head told him that like the right answer for whatever reason was to use a performance enhancer. Right. So I think by spending like how you negotiate with that was a really interesting quote for me from Kobe Bryant. I was like, how you negotiate with yourself, that voice in your head really determines what those decisions that you make. And you said like, you like to make, you have a high ethical, your ethical voice outweighs your other one, right? I'm sure they both are in there, right? But like, there's an internal debate that goes on, right? But you side with the ethical one because of, whatever its value, but certainly everybody has that debate. So I thought it was a really interesting quote coming from Kobe Bryant. I didn't necessarily expect it, but surprised me with that one. But so anyway, so I think that's how I was going to tie that one together. But like, is that spending some time with that voice makes you stronger because you recognize like, oh, that's the other voice that I don't want to listen to versus this is the voice I do want to listen to
100%.
Make a good choice, right? Make good
100%.
Choices, right? Like we used to,
because making good choices is
making good choices Make good choices.
I'm not. Yeah, not say exactly. Make good choices. I yell at the kids. Make good choices. When they drive away from the house. But it's true, right? So like making good choices is you can say it's an ethical thing, but it's also a skill-based thing, right? Like, and you can reinforce that behavior. Like when you make good choices and you get good at making good choices or choices that align with your goals or support your values or your mission, you can make more good decisions, right? And so when you're not making
it's
good
also giving yourself
decisions,
credit for that too. Like when you have to make a tough
yeah,
decision and it was a tough decision, I think you have to, recognize the fact that I made a tough
mhm,
decision. It was,
mhm,
that was
mhm,
uncomfortable or awkward or whatever it was, either, in racing or in life.
mhm.
And then, you have to give yourself credit for that too. Like, oh,
Yeah,
like
totally.
when you
And if
do,
you make a
because like
bad
you said, it's,
decision, I was going to say, just then if you decide to do something wrong or whatever, like some people will beat themselves up for a long time about that, to also just give yourself grace and be like, that was not good. That was bad. Like the minute you know that it was bad, if you think it was bad, it was probably bad. And so say to yourself, you have to come out publicly and make a big announcement, be like, that wasn't great. I can do better. Like I know I can do better. Like I'm not super proud of what I just did with whatever that was, but I can do better next time. Even that sort of like forgiving yourself. And so you can get to the next part, which is the good part, right? Because if you never forgive yourself, then you never get to the next part, which is like, how do I
yeah, you
get
get
better
kind
at
of
making
stuck.
good decisions?
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally get stuck inside that space. And I think that's also an important aspect. Wow, dude guy all became Zen dude guy there
Man,
for a
look at that.
second. Dude,
You got to
Zen
stick
dude
around.
guy?
You got to get past the 20-minute mark for the good stuff.
Nah, we needed a warm up. Despite me talking your ear off ahead of time, we needed a warm up for sure. So let's do this. I want to put a pin in the voices part because I talked to you before about some great athlete conversations I had this week in my coach calls around voices in the head, specifically voices from data, and how we manifest them in our decisions around training and racing. So let's just say right now, Dude Guy episode number 8 is going to be about the voices in our head from training and racing. Specifically,
Oh, I like
there's
it.
Stride Guy, there's Garmin Guy. I'm sure there's
Oh, I
Wahoo
love Garmin
Guy. There's
guy.
like Zwift Guy, Zwift Dude, who's like nice, or he's like meh, and you're like that wasn't a meh workout, that was a nice workout. Where's my like epic, and how we personify data and use it to interpret our own performance, and is that better or worse for us than just understanding directly ourselves how we felt about that performance, how we felt during that performance? Is it helping us or is it hurting us? Stay tuned. Dude Guy
Stay
8.
tuned. Stay
I promise I'm not
tuned.
traveling anywhere anytime soon because I think I used all my spousal approval units. So I'm here. I'll be ready to Dude Guy. Matt will align with your international schedule and we'll figure it out. So
You're back
in the
to
meantime,
running your same loop. You're going to be back to running your same loop backwards now, just to keep yourself entertained, right?
I'm kind of tempted. So, well, this weekend, for those of you who are still paying attention, 37 minutes and 50 seconds in, this weekend is Ultra May. So I got plenty of time to run. I got to mix it up. So for those of you who don't know, Ultra May is 1 hour of exercise every 4 hours for 12 hours. It's sort of a play off of what David Goggins did with his Ultra plan. And so people can choose the modality they want. They've got to do an hour of exercise every 4 hours. They can do it for 12 hours. They can do it for 16 hours, or 16 hours, I think, or maybe 18 or 24. So 24 gets you 12 hours of exercise, which is pretty legit, right? I mean, with the Goggins thing, they only run 4 miles every 4 hours. So that's like, come on, it's 4 miles is like half an hour. Right? Come on. So we're doing twice as much. And so I'll be doing sometime running and sometime on the bike. TBD how much I can run, but I'll be out there. So it may depend on the lights because there's a banquet tonight. I have to go for my daughter's team, and so it's possible that I may not be able to run at a minimal time. I may be back out running in the dark, so maybe not backwards to start, but backwards tomorrow. I promise.
Sweet.
Deal.
Nice job.
Awesome. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to Dude Guy. If you like the episode, share it out. If you've got comments, feedback, thoughts about the Voices in Your Head episode coming up, let us know. Reply to the comments. Tell us on social media. We do pay attention, especially those of you on the team. Appreciate all your kind words and kudos. But tell us what you want us to talk about. We'll dive in more deeply. Until next episode, see you guys later.